All right, welcome to our April Board of Education meeting. I'm glad to see lots of new and fresh faces. Well, not new, but lots of fresh faces new from a while back. But anyways, let's call this meeting to order. A roll call, please.
Gunn,
Here.
Mullen,
Here.
Noggle,
Here.
Wacken, here, Waker.
Here. All right, if you join me for the music. So we pledge.
States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for
All right. We get to do the awards, Standout Spirit Award.
That's all right. I get to go first. And I get to introduce Mr. Colin Hvac. Did I say that right? Come on up. And according to Mrs. Noel, you are like superstar, volunteer, never have to be asked, from the library to the trash to the outside flower beds. This guy, if you need anything done, keep that in mind. He does it all. And for that, you are our Standout Spirit Award. And I'm going to ask Miss Noel and Miss Myers is your teacher, right? Ask them both to come on up, and
Miss McGee.
yeah, and who else do we have? Can you share a little bit?
There is nothing that Callan won't do. In fact, he sees needs before we even know he heard us. Like, we could be walking around the corner and just be kind of, oh, this would be great to have done. And Callan just saddles up next to you and says, I can do that. So he's amazing. Every teacher he's ever had, they're, all here cheering him on since kindergarten. Comments from teachers and other kids about how helpful he is. If we need like a student chaperone to take other kids around, new kids come to the school, he's like, look, I can show you where everything's at. The boiler's over here, this, that, he knows everything. So he's leading us this year. And I don't know if there are any middle school principals here, but this is your guy. Just give him a tour. He's gonna be able to do everything, everybody's job by the end of the day. He could answer phones. He could do anything you need him to do. He knows everything. So we're going to miss him like a whole lot. We've literally had the conversation, what are we going to do next year? Because Callan, it's like losing an employee. So we love you, Callan, and this has been a long time coming. We think you're amazing, and we just appreciate everything you've done for us over the past 6 years. Thank you.
No, and I'd like to present to you for outstanding achievements and accomplishments in representing Sand Springs Public School and the community. That's yours. That's probably, this will probably be what you're more interested in. The Chick-fil-A gift card. And with
Miss McGee, we've all said over the years how amazing he is. So I'm just kind of including everybody.
yes.
Institution together. There we go.
So we're looking at. Good job.
Hey, Kate Center Award.
I'm gonna ask Miss McGee to come back up here. She doesn't get to leave. Because we like to celebrate our staff and our friends. They're one of us. I feel like that a room full of people like this, I love it. It's been a long time since we've had a room full of people like this together. And I appreciate we're getting back to a sense of normalcy. And one thing that allows us to do is to celebrate special people, and we've got a special person. What I want to do first is I want to read, because sometimes we lose sight of the fact that what we're all about, and we have a school motto. And that motto is challenge minds, inspire hearts, and empower a community of learners. And I promise you, when I was reading what Miss Noel wrote about Miss McGee was, I said, that's exactly what she does every day. And she takes that to heart, and she uses that to change kids. And I see that with the kid that we just had at their call, and I appreciate that. But Miss McGee, I want to read what Miss Noel wrote about you. She says, when Laura encounters a need, she feels it. She will hunt down a lunchbox, answer phones, vacuum floors, and car rider duty, all while fulfilling her role as a librarian. She is the definition of a problem solver. She fosters relationships with every student in the school. You can always count on her to do the right thing. We couldn't ask for a more dedicated team member. We appreciate what you do. You are exemplified the Standout spirit. You take that motto to heart. We appreciate that. So we're going to award you the Standout Pacer Award for accomplishments in Sand Springs School. So, Miss,
Thank you.
come and join us, please. I can't say enough, but this is what it's all about, and we appreciate
It
what you do.
It is. We are absolutely lost when Laura's not there because she's seriously, if you look at grit and perseverance in the definitions, she would, in the dictionary, I can't talk, in the dictionary, it would be her. She's amazing. She will hunt down a lunchbox and change a pull up and change numbers and she will find a lost child. Like, it doesn't matter. From the second they walk in the door, she will fill every need that they have. And I couldn't ask for a better team member and friend, and she's absolutely amazing. We wouldn't know what to do without her.
Battle of the Books just happened. You might want to, because I know she's taken intimate role in that and getting that started for the district as well. And so she's broad. So do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Well, Battle of the Books it's a national program. I didn't come up with the idea, but it's kind of what it is. It's an academic team type champions competition. So I just thought it would be interesting. And I'm always all about trying to figure out how to get a kid to read a book that would never read a book. So what we do is we open it up to all 4th and 5th graders in the district. And in the fall, I let the kids pick their own teams. They can have 4 or 5 members on a team. And we select 10 books that they have to cover as with their team. So to get them in, I mean, they're like, I only have to read 2 books, right? Because that's how you 5 people in 10 books. I mean, they're like, I just have to read 2 books, right? And then I get a candy bar. So I buy them all a king-size candy bar if they get all the way through December where they compete at the school level. But anyways, and we usually have about 75 or 80 4th and 5th graders that compete at the school level each time, and they have to read 10 books. And it's not the latest and greatest Wimpy Kid or Dogman book. It's books that that have been Newberries and from Super Fudge to Night of the Twisters to just books you guys probably all read growing up that are just wonderful, but might have an ugly cover right now that they would never check out. And so that's just what I tell them. I mean, in the end, I feel successful is if they have picked up a book that they would have never picked up otherwise, and they enjoyed it. So then in December, this is going on at all the elementary sites. We take the top 2 winning teams to districts in March, and they have to read an additional 10 books for their team. And Pratt's the one that Pratt took our trophy from us. Yeah, but that's okay.
Okay.
Not that trophy has been in the Angus Library for several years, but COVID helped it add one there too that gets to go back. But that's okay. They worked really hard, and the kids that generally make it to the district competition, and for sure the kids that get to the top at the district have pretty much read 19, 20 books. So they work really hard, and we just make it a fun competition. We've written a grant, a foundation grant every year, and that's how we paid for our books. Mr. Arkees has generously bought some of our books. We buy just paperback because they're so expensive. And then this last year we wrote it for a buzzer system. So we have a fancy buzzer system. So we aren't using the different key honk, beat things and who rang it first. So we know now who the light comes on, and we're feeling real uptown and fancy. So yeah. So, and we have it at the case, and it's a fun time. So I think they enjoy it.
Thank you for doing all of
I appreciate that. I mean, the difference that a librarian makes in a school district, I can still remember vividly, and it's been more years ago than some of us in this room middle life. I can remember the librarian at my elementary school, Mrs. Baker. She made an influence on my life that I can remember, like I say, many years ago. So Colin, your librarian right here, she makes a difference for you folks.
Alan was on one of those winning teams that we took the districts this year. Last as a 4th grader and as a 5th grader, he went both years. His team did. So yeah.
I just want to say too that having been, a principal at Angus, whether it's staff or students, whatever Miss McGee's involved in, she makes it fun. And so, like, if she's doing it, you're just going to laugh. I mean, whether it's the book fair theme or whatever. She's always got something crazy planned. One year she had me run my bloomers at the flagpole.
They weren't really for bloomers. I made some.
Right, but we act like
They're pretty
fancy. But I'm just telling you, she makes it so much fun and so much fun for the kids, so.
And I tricked her to get her here because she thought she was coming for Callan. And so the last minute, her child breaks his leg in 3 places. And so I had to call her and say, okay, I know I told you were coming for Callan, but you're actually getting an award too. So I really need you to come. But she was coming in support of him and I knew she would be here. That's how confident I was that she would be here, that I wasn't even going to tell her she was getting an award, which she wouldn't have been happy about later, but it would have been fine. That's yes. So we love you and we're so appreciative of you.
Wow.
1, 2, 3.
Nice, you guys.
Well, now we have a Standout Pace Setter Award for our new director of the 21st Century Learning Center program, Jamie Conrad. And so we're, come on up here, Jamie. Jamie came in, man, just like a fireball and has done an incredible job. One of the main goals of this project really is to strengthen the relationships with the families, the schools, and the community, and really to build upon those to help our kids in that way. And she's done a fantastic job with that. I know our church is one of the partners, and man, just the communication now has been so just top level. And really engaging the partners to get their feedback and to really get their help. I know you've raised a lot of funds for the program as well through those things. And so we're excited about your leadership. You were nominated by Kristen Arnold, and she may have another word to say. I know one thing she said was that when we bring you up here, that we should give you the mic. And so we don't, this is the mic, but we don't really have a mic to hand you, but I know we'll let you share as well. But Kristen, did you have something else you want to share about?
Well, I just want to say when I wrote it, it was several months ago when she had first taken the job on, and she just did a phenomenal job. And since then, this is the last year of our 21st Century Grant, which is a almost $4 million grant. And so Ms. Conrad's been working with Ms. Smith with federal programs. They just submitted that, so we'll know here pretty soon whether that program is going to continue with the grant. And I mean, she's just phenomenal. It would take the rest of the meeting to go through all the things that she's done and all the connections that she's drawn through the community and reaching out to teachers and making this program better. And so just so excited that she's on our team, and she's definitely the person for this job. I mean, like, she is a go-getter. So, and I know I'm happy to bring Bo on the team too, because I said, now you're, one of those dads that get to do all that stuff. Not that you didn't as a PTO dad. So anyway, we appreciate you so much. Like,
You say submit a grant, you can roll it off your tongue so quickly, like she just submitted a grant for another 5 years. It takes a relentless amount of work just to get it off the ground, pages and pages and research. And it's been a feat, and you did a fabulous job.
Well, I couldn't have done it without Claudia. There is absolutely no way. Claudia Smith is probably, between Claudia and Miss Arnold, I think they're probably the only ones that kept me from crying every night. But our kids are doing really good. And in fact, I just hit you up before I even came into the board meeting to say, hey, I've got Project Summer Spirit coming, and we're doing Standout kicks on Route 66. And we're going to bring in reading and math and different things. We're going to be using maps, and we're going to read brochures, and they're not even going to realize that they are actually practicing reading skills things. So we're taking an imaginary road trip. And so I'd already hit him up about, I need your El Camino, and I need you to show up and talk to my kids. So
It's going to be great. So we're, again, just thankful for your leadership and the work that you're putting in continually for this, for our kids, and for our community. So this is awarded to you for outstanding achievements and accomplishments in representing Sand Springs Public Schools and the community at large. Yeah. That's
All right. that concludes the awards. So anybody who would like to exit now that awards are completed, you may gracefully, right? Yes. Go find a cooler spot. Or-
If you're ready,
I
we'll start with, the department seven, right? So we're gonna start with Mr. Tim Ray and, I'm gonna start by saying it's been an incredibly hard year. There's no doubt, we all know it. How we've, powered through it has been, phenomenal in my opinion with our staff and how they have really tried hard to bridge any kind of learning loss that may have occurred during the craziness of quarantines and all of those things. But truly, I just attempt to come, Mr. Ray can come and present to the board because I think it's important to understand that backstory of what happens behind the scenes when our staff really does focus on individual students and student intervention to make sure they're getting what they need. I know Mr. Trout is here in support. I asked if they were going to be the do-walk team. He said maybe. So I'm going to turn it over to Tim and just let you talk through, if you don't mind. I know your PowerPoint is up there as well. Is that it?
Ready to go.
That's not it.
It's
I
ready.
really don't have anything to say other than to, just remind people that what we do is we administer. Yeah, that's an old picture. Eric, you know, when you're the oldest and frumpiest, you have to get creative, but yeah, we don't make policy, we administer it. So when we're given CDC guidelines and SDE rules and a district COVID protocol, we have to decide how we're going to put that into action. And that's what Tim's going to talk to you about it today. We have a lot of discussions among the three of us about how we're going to put the various rules together, how we're going to make things work in our building to benefit our kids. So couldn't be prouder of these two guys and all the help that they do and the way that they are creative and hardworking administrators. Jimmy.
Go ahead and go to the next one. So when we talk about intervention at our place, we're talking about Charles Bates High School, of course. These are the existing programs we have in place, and I feel like we need to talk about those before we start this presentation, really, because these are the resources that we ended up using, and it fit really well into what we were trying to do as far as our journey through this one-of-a-kind year in terms of intervention with distance learning. So first, and I put a packet on some of you guys' chairs there, and this first sheet you're going to see is our ICU program. I think a few years back, we came back and talked about our ICE program, which was our tier 2 intervention. This is tier 3. So typically where you would see this at Charles Page High School is for our students who are struggling the most. The bottom 5 to 7% of our kids who are really in a hole that they can't get out of unless we intervene intensively. And what that is basically is a pull-out program that we use on Fridays. Typically, there's less than 15 students in that program. There's 2 highly qualified teachers who are in that atmosphere with them, along with an administrator. And then we bring in tutors throughout the day as teachers have planning periods. And our goal in that program is to fill gaps, learning gaps the students have created. Usually it's because of attendance, or maybe it's a quarantine, or whatever the case may be. They've missed a lot of school, and we understand that in years past, these are kids that we would never get back. And well, we've been doing this ICU program for 4 years now, 4 or 5 years now. It was really good for us this year to use in distance learning because our teachers believe in it. Our teachers have seen the data through the 4 years. They understand that it works. On average, for the 4 years, a student going into ICU on one day can, on average, would accumulate about 37 points. And some students might accumulate 125 points, depending on how much work they did and how well they were progressing. We ask our teachers to give us modified assignments and basically showing that they can master a skill. So that's kind of the idea of the ICU program. And again, it's for kids who are really, really struggling. The WIT program, that's the second sheet in the packet that I gave you. This is something we created for the summertime. And this is not really into what we've done so far, but certainly it's something that we're gonna do in the summertime like we always have. Students are really close in some classes. You can't qualify for the WIP program unless you have a 58% in the class. So you're 2 points away from passing the class. So we give them some options to recover some maybe attendance hours and recover some credits. And really, again, we're looking for skills acquisition. That's really what we're after. So remember the ICU as we go. Go ahead, Ryan. Well, we started with distance learning. Of course, we had to really dig into the district policy. You'll find this on our website. This is the language that's used. And we had to dig through this and make sure, for sure, that we're in compliance with what is expected of us. So this is where we started. And I know most of you have probably approved this or looked at this or even created it. But really, what I want to read some of it to you and then talk about kind of what stuck out to us. Distance learning is learning that occurs when students who are attending brick and mortar classes must complete coursework in a remote location, including home, due to a temporary closure of school. For us, that's the thing that jumped out, was that it's temporary. This isn't the way we want to do school for long term. This is a temporary fix or a temporary way to get our students to the next time we can come and have class again. Now, there's a place for virtual school, there's a place for blended schedules, but we're administration at the building site. So that's what our focus is. So we looked at it as this is a temporary means to get our kids to the next step till we can see them again. Coursework for distance learning will be delivered by a classroom teacher via online platform or work packets. We all know this at this point. Really what I had to look at as the attendance guy and discipline guy is attendance. And Mr. Beard and I and Miss Arnold and I were in lots of meetings where I asked a million questions because it's tough to kind of sift through this stuff and figure out how we're going to figure attendance out. Here's what the attendance guidelines are. And remember, we'll come back to this as we go through the presentation, but to be considered in attendance a full number of instructional days for the instructional period of a temporary disruption, there's that word again, resulting in distance learning format or 6 weeks grading period, students must meet one of these following criteria. They got to complete instructional activities for 90% of the days of the instructional period, completion of 90% of all assigned coursework, or maintaining pace for on-time course completion. So really what that said to us is they got to do the work. They've got to do the work in these temporary modes of instruction. We've got to make sure the work is there for them. If they need to get it at midnight, if they need to get it during real time, whatever it is, we got to make sure that they have means to get the work. So that's the idea. Work completion really equals attendance for us. That's where we started. Go ahead, Ryan. So our charge, this policy drove our intervention strategy from the beginning. Our objective was to have every student under our care meet one of the following criteria listed in the previous slide. 90% of the work completion, on time, or on course to graduate the course. So basically a 60% or better, that's what we're looking at. That's kind of the mark that we looked at after a distance learning period. So something to think about. So we soon recognized that our current tier 3, that's our ICU program I discussed earlier, plan for regular school will be effective in intervening during distance learning. This took a lot of conversation, but finally Mr. Trout says, why don't we just do what we do? And we decided we're going to do that. We're just going to have to adjust it to meet the new way of school, these temporary breaks in school that we might have. Well, this was a great advantage for us because we didn't have to ask teachers to do anything different. All of our teachers have worked through the ICU program for 4 straight years. They understand what it is and how it works and why we do it. So this was, we felt like pretty important because they were being asked to do a lot of things that they'd never done before. They were asked to teach while they're being recorded. They were asked to provide assignments through Google Classroom. They were getting a feel for that. So we thought this was really good for us because it's nothing new. And anytime you can tell your staff, we're not asking you to do anything new, it seems to help. Also, our teachers know our data, like I said, so there's some validity to the program. If I could sell a program to our teachers, it would be ICU because they've all worked in the program and they've all seen what, a kid goes in there on Friday, by Tuesday, their motivation level is totally changed because their average is totally changed and their skills gap, hopefully, is totally changed. So first of all, before we do anything, Mr. Trout really wants us to focus on our philosophy. How are we going to really look at this? What's the spirit? What's the spirit of what we're going to do? So here's what we really came up with, and these are my words, but the way that I saw us work together in this, and when I say us, I'm talking about administrators and teachers and counselors and everybody. We're going to provide instruction live to students, if at all possible, through Google Classroom Meets, and provide all assignments on the Google Classroom forum. That's policy. We knew we were going to do that. We'll be flexible and show grace, key word for us, to students using all the resources we have available, everything we have. When we return from a distance learning situation, we're going to provide intensive intervention, there's your ICU piece, if necessary, to recover assignments and fill in learning gaps. That's kind of where we started. That's our philosophy. We're going to be pretty flexible because we never know what's going to happen the next day there for a while. We weren't sure if we'd be in school on Friday, so we had to make sure that we all lived this philosophy. Here's the basic plan, and then I'll get in kind of the nuts and bolts of what we did. Here's the basic plan. Distance learning sessions, again, conducted in real time by teachers. Assignments posted on Google Classroom, recorded instruction available to students in case they couldn't attend at regular times. So again, provide the instruction, get us to the next point where we can hopefully meet again. Once we return to school, we're going to allow time for students to complete assignments for full credit up to an appropriate due date. Here's how we looked at this piece. So if a student is absent for school for, let's say, 2 days, they get a day for a day. So if your student missed Thursday and Friday, really their assignments wouldn't be due until Monday, Tuesday afternoon. So that's kind of how we looked at this as we gauge full credit assignments. So if we were going to be out for 9 school days, we plan to give those kids 9 additional school days once we get back. The benefit of that, surely, is that our teachers can really engage those students for assignments because assignments equal attendance. And that's what we're after. And obviously, those skills gaps, again, that we keep going back to. But when we come back, the other part of it, obviously, is intensive intervention. That's going to be for the kids who we weren't able to get through teachers. So as we come back from the distance learning, a lot of what our teachers did that first day is they said, okay, guys, I never saw you during distance learning. They had their names. Here's what I'm missing from you, you, and you, and you. And you have, see if you can get this to me by Friday, because assignments equal attendance. So students hopefully had motivation to do that because they knew that it'd be counted for full credit and it's tied directly to their attendance. And our kids know all about attendance, believe me. And then attendance at the end will be coded appropriately to to DVAs, which is distance learning absence. And I'll talk more about that as we get there. And then I'm going to talk to you about an MAI list. And this was a new thing that we had to have teachers help us with, but it was a really small new thing. Go ahead. So the nuts and bolts. So here's really getting into what we did. So let's get to it. Semester 1, we had 9 school days of distance learning. So that was November 12th through the 24th. I know you probably all remember this. Instruction was delivered by teachers using our distance learning model. This was the first time we did it. That third sheet in your packet, on that Friday, we asked our teachers, who have you not seen? Who have you not heard from? Who has not done any assignment those first 2 days, Thursday, Friday? They gave us a list. That letter that you're looking at in your packet is the email and the letter that we sent out to our parents. So, and basically that letter says, we noticed that you haven't engaged in the distance learning process. How can we help you? What do you need? You need a hotspot, whatever it may be. How can we help you get engaged? On November 20th, so that would be the following Friday. So we went Thursday, Friday, and then the following Friday, the 20th, teachers were required to provide administrators with the names of their students that met all of these following guidelines. So they didn't attend any live sessions. They didn't complete any assignments. And this was the only new mandate we asked teachers to do. So we created a Google document. Basically, we called it the MAI list, missing in action. Haven't seen them, haven't heard from them. I've reached out to them. I don't know where they are. They could have moved for all I know. There's no engagement. They're missing in action. That was the birth of the MAI list. So this was a teacher-created document that had the names of students who didn't engage. And they didn't, so work of class in any way. So no work completion, no virtual attendance. Like I said, we haven't seen them. This list could be edited at any time and was live to teachers throughout the process. Keep that in mind. This was a teacher list that they could access at any time. So if a student all of a sudden engaged, they could delete them off that list at any time. And that was really important to us as we progress. November 20th MAI list. There was 489 students on that list. So you consider we have over 1,200 students at our site. That was concerning for us. 489 of them we haven't seen at all in over a week. So really 7 days, right? So over that weekend, every student and parent was contacted by email to see if we could assist in getting the student engaged in the process. Again, it was very similar to the letter you have there. We haven't seen you. How can we help? We had 78 response emails from students and parents before Monday morning. So we knew that they had internet access. We knew that we just weren't reaching some students for some reason, and we needed to. Four days later, remember that MAI list is still live. So teachers updated the list of students attended class and turned in assignments. So we're getting ready to go to Thanksgiving. This is the reason for the list being a live document again. 204 students were on the MAI list on the 24th. So we reduced it from that 489 number. So we went out and tried to seek students and said, how can we help you? When I say we, I mean everybody. Let's all try. Let's give them 3 phone calls and 3 emails apiece if we can get them engaged in the process. So now we got it down to 204. So that's more manageable for us. We again did contact these parents, these students and parents over that weekend, or actually over that holiday break. So we returned after Thanksgiving on the 30th. Regular school began. All teachers were tasked to retrieve any missing work they had from students during that week of regular classes to try to reduce the MAI list, that 204 number. So now students are actually in the classes, and basically that's when you have that talk. I didn't get any assignments from you for those 9 days. We have to get these assignments or you're going to be counted absent for the whole time. So students slowly and surely started to do assignments. Teachers accepted full credit for all work until Monday, December 7th. So remember the day for a day. It was about 9 days, but it was a little bit over that. I think we gave them 9 days plus a weekend. And that was that grace. We want to show grace and flexibility. But students knew, oh, I got to get my work done. I really didn't do anything in distance learning. It's time to buckle up because when that due date's over with, it's not for full credit anymore, necessarily. There we go. So on December 11th, so that's another week, we conducted our first ICU session devised solely of teacher recommendations from the MAI list. Remember, we still have that list. Remember, they're deleting them off the list as we go. Now that list is down to 48 students that are going to attend this ICU session. Remember, I told you typically in ICU, we have 15 or less students. We're in a pretty small space, and we have 2 highly qualified teachers and an administrator there. For this, we had to move it to the cafeteria. So it was a pretty big undertaking. We had 48 students in there, but here's the key and the easiest thing, or the best thing I think for teachers is, I knew where to get assignments. We told students that were coming to ICU on that day, come with your Chromebook charged, because all of your assignments are on Google Classroom. We don't have to go look for assignments. We know exactly where they're at. So it was pretty easy accessing assignments, 48 students. So we had to add staff in there, as you can imagine, but had a really good day. Again, this is nothing new for teachers. The teachers got that list of 48. I said, teachers, your ICU list this week is your MAI list. So you already have the ICU list. And once students got notification that they were on the ICU list for the week, part of that letter said, if you turn in work this week, you may be taken out of ICU. So there's another little carrot maybe if they didn't want to be in there. We found that kids kind of like going in there because they can really change their life academically pretty quickly.
Tim, can I interject something really quick? I just like, could you go back to the previous slide? The interesting thing to me and the great laudatory comment for Tim is between November 20th and December 11th, he had reduced the number of students who had not engaged in distance learning by 90%. So 90% of the students who had originally not engaged in distance learning were now back on track for course completion and passing grades. That's a remarkable effort. And then the last thing, those 48 kids in there on December 11th, that was like H&R Block on tax day. Those kids, they were serious. They knew this guy was not going to leave them alone until they got their stuff done. And that was a full-on, serious work session in the cafeteria supervised by, Mr. Berry, our head basketball coach. It was a phenomenal thing to see those 48 kids who, quite frankly, are some of our lowest achieving kids, but deeply invested and deeply involved and really working hard to get their stuff done. It's pretty impressive.
So we made it through our first distance learning time period. As you do, it's time to reflect and figure out what you can do better. We concluded that we have two major hurdles with students when it comes to distance learning. So we knew it was likely that we'd have to do it again. So we wanted to learn from our mistakes and get better at the things that we struggled with. We found that students had a lack of Wi-Fi access. There was a lack of Wi-Fi for some people, and that may be just the excuse they gave us. I don't know. Students' understanding of the expectations truly for what they're supposed to do during a distance learning session. So these two things we felt like, well, those are pretty fixable. We can address that. We can get better at that. So we finalized the MAI list on around December 16th. So we had the final list done. So we've intervened. Our teachers have sought work from students since we got back on November 30th. Remember, now it's time for us to figure out the attendance. Attendance is tied directly to the instruction. So remember that as we get into some of these little details of data. But remember, those were the three things in policy we're looking for. 90% of the coursework done, maintaining pace for course completion. So again, that 60% mark is kind of what we were looking at as we started really investigating this. So DVAP for us in coding is distance learning present. DVA is distance learning absent. So what we found when we ran these numbers and figured it all out, and went through almost every student that qualified, is that we had 367 total absences from class on those 9 days. And that, remember, we have about 1,200 students, so that seems a little crazy. Each student would have 7 classes. Not every student. You know, we have blended schedules, and some kids only have 1 or 2 classes with us. But keep that in mind. 367 total absences based on the policy and how we have to code that. So
I ask this one question for clarification. So you're talking about class absences.
Class absences.
Absence.
So one student could have 7 absences per day.
Right, right. I just want to clarify that because those are 357 classes.
Yes,
a day.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
So that's 8,400 classes possible in a day. 7 classes times 1,200 kids. That's 8,400 classes in one day times 9 days.
you're getting J rotored on me. I don't.
So what I'm saying is 367 is really small.
That's like where
Somebody's got to be J.
care about the.
So
how little that is.
yeah. So
Very small.
to give you a kind of a data piece in comparison, I ran the 9 same days in November the previous year. Remember, that was that was before life changed for everybody. That was a typical semester. And it was over 1,000 class periods that people missed. So as far as attendance go, felt really good about where we were. But that's just a small piece of it. Doesn't really matter when we're looking at skills and we're looking at credits and we're looking at graduation track. Remember, we're thinking about these 9 days and how we get them back. It's temporary without losing where we were, essentially. So that equates to about 12,000 classes that were coded DVAP as we go. You can go to the next slide. That's in the weeds of the data. What really mattered to us, because we finished that semester, what really mattered to us was, okay, where are we at with graduation track? That's the question Mr. Trout asked me. Where are we at? I need to know where we're at in comparison to last year. How are we looking? Because this was different than anything we've ever done before. So the big picture in the fall of 1920, the last regular semester of life, we had 215 failed classes. Out of all of our kids, 215 classes that they failed, below a 60%. They didn't get credit for the course. The fall of this semester, this last semester we just finished, we had 96. So in terms of credit and graduation track, we're in really good shape. We were pretty pleased with that. Of course, there's more to the story. We want to make sure that our kids haven't lost skills and that we're progressing through our essential standards as we want. But as far as the data that I could give him was, we're in pretty good shape. our remediation, our intervention has worked to this point in terms of getting our kids to the stage. Can you go back one? So remember I told you there were a couple things that we needed to reflect on and get better at. We wanted to provide more Google Classroom training for teachers at the site and the district level. Mr. Beard helped us with that. And also, really, our teachers just got more comfortable in the system. This was new. We had done things through Google Classroom, but we weren't fully in where everything that we did was tied directly to Google Classroom. And that's what our teachers did when we came back. We have regular classroom with me instructing the class, but everything's on the classroom. So if you missed a day, then you could get the assignment and know exactly what you missed for that day. So we were just preparing them to look at things in the same manner, except instead of actually being on site, you're gonna watch. And then you're gonna get your assignments the same place you always get your assignments. And teachers just got more comfortable with that, just got better at that, like anything else you do. A little practice and we get better. Teachers address student expectations directly with students. That was huge. So if we go on distance learning again, class, this is exactly what's expected of you. I'm going to post 2 assignments every week. I'm going to give you 3 videos to watch, and those assignments are due on Friday. Whatever the case may be. Everyone varied a little bit, but basically that's what you're looking at. Students understood, okay, I understand now if we're out on Friday and it's declared a distance learning day, I know exactly what I got to do. And so that we felt like by the time we were ready to do this again, we were better prepared. We kind of knew what to look for. So let's get to it again. Semester 2, 6 school days of distance learning. February 11th through the 19th. Instruction was given or delivered again by teachers using distance learning model. Teachers were once again required to input their students on the MAI list to administration by Monday, the 22nd. So we used the same strategy we used before. Then Mr. Trout, I'm more obviously focused on students and what they're doing. Well, Mr. Trout started to get pretty interested in the data and looking at what our teachers were doing. So I'm worried about engagement of students, and that's when he started really looking at our teachers' engagement and how good are we getting at this? Are we getting pretty good at this? I feel like we always felt like, man, our teachers are knocking this out of the park. But like anything in school, you got to have some data to back that. So Mr. Trout started looking into that, and what you see is our teachers made about 1,800 posts to Google Classroom in that time frame of distance learning. That's an average of 30 per teacher, more than 1 post per day per class. So they were fully engaged in the process at this point in time. They were hitting expert level. We felt really comfortable about where we were with teachers for sure. Again, parents and students were contact emails were sent out off that MAI list. If they were on that list, they were being contacted once again because we knew first semester that worked. We got to do what works at this point, so that's what we did. It's time for ICU again. An ICU session was created on February 26th from the MAI list students. So the same strategy, basically. We got our number down to about 37. These are students who had multiple classes that they weren't engaged in. So we didn't put a student in here if he didn't do work in one class. If there were 3 or more classes, that's who we went after for this ICU session. These are, again, the kids, the bottom 5 to 7% who just didn't engage at all, and they need our help or they're quitting. They're done. I'm overwhelmed and I can't, it does me no good to do the work because I have no idea what you're talking about type situations. 37 students attended that session. That last letter in the packet, that was a letter that was sent to those ICU kids. So just so you understand kind of the language that we use. So what about the non-ICU selected students? Same strategy. Teachers accepted work for full credit until March 5th. Again, it was a day for a day and then a little bit of grace. Day for a day and a little bit of grace. They were tasked with trying to recover work once again, and they saw students in class each day. So this wasn't difficult at this point because everybody knew the expectation. If I'm a student, I know what I got to do. If I don't do my work, my teacher is going to be on me, and then the administrators are soon to follow. And that's kind of how we looked at it, and I feel like that's how our kids look at it. March 5th was also a distance learning day. That was when we did the employee vaccinations. Teachers conducted live sessions like they did. And they were confident that they could provide their own intervention for just this one day. Whatever I sign this day, I guarantee you I can get this kid to do it. Everybody that's there, I'll get them there, Mr. Ray, don't worry about it. So that was kind of how that day went. So what's next? Well, we'll finalize our MIA list for our 7 total days of distance learning for second semester. I inquire that we'll probably have one more day, potentially. Yeah, so we'll once again go through the same process and equate what our attendance is, and we feel pretty confident that it's going to be pretty good because, like I said, it's work completion, on course on course for the course means you're going to be counted present, hopefully. Intervention to graduation, ICU sessions. Remember, I told you this is something that we always do. We continue to do these each Friday. We had a good session last Friday. We have one scheduled for this coming Friday. We're going to keep at it. The WIT program is the page that was, I guess, the second one in your packet. Again, that is just that stands for whatever it takes. If students are deficient, by the time we're done in May, then we'll have a program in place ready to go. If they qualify, and it's not a large percentage of students who qualify, but the ones who qualify really need to be there. If you're willing to put forth the effort to get 2 percentage points for 4 days, here we go. And so we have a program in place for that. We will continue that. And the last thing, we always try to look at when we have programs and we reflect and look at these things is the consumer's point of view. So if I'm a student, this is really important. If I'm a student, what's expected of me if we go to distance learning? And it's pretty simple. If you can attend the Google Meets, if at all possible, do so. Your work's just going to be easier for you if you see your teacher. What we found is most of our kids really like to see our teachers. They like to at least have that little bit of interaction on those days to keep plugged into our high school. You're going to have to complete the assignments. That's huge. That's tied directly to attendance. So we emphasize that all the time. And I love the policy because if you complete 90% of the coursework at Charles Page High School, you're going to pass. Because our teachers aren't going to if you're putting forth the effort, our teachers are going to make sure you get there. Now, if you're not doing the work, that's a totally different story. But if you complete 90% of the coursework, I'm really confident that you're going to be in good shape. And then like I said, our students know if I don't do the work, my teachers are going to be hounding me every day. And then, of course, we'll be behind the teachers with our programming ready to go. Thank you.
Question time. I really think this is an important piece. If you have questions, other sites were fairly similar. Of course, there's differences between elementary and secondary. But I wanted him to go in detail so you could see the work behind what it took to really pull off what we intended to do. So any questions for this team? They're amazing. Are the Page Academy students included?
No, because they have their own interventions. So we don't see those kids ever. So they're not involved in our intervention programs. And both of our intervention programs, our ICE and our ICU, are both usually on site. So those are our kids. And those are our teachers who provide us their interventions. So no, this is full-time brick and mortar and our blended students. So not virtual, not full virtual.
Thanks. If the board will let me think, I think this is great training for college. In college, sometimes kids, high school graduates have a weird, rude awakening when they have to first go to the blackboard to find their assignments. And my son had a professor who posted at midnight on Sunday night, and it was due Monday afternoon. So it's good for students to have this experience. It will help them in the future.
It's certainly something that my college student definitely had to be able to be prepared to do because most of his classes for semester were virtual. And so it was a learning curve for really all levels, not just K-12, but college as well. So we came up with a plan, we stuck behind it, and these people worked really hard to try to get it to a place where kids were successful. And that's what we're going to do. When Tim says whatever it takes, that's really the mantra. We're going to do whatever it takes to get the kids to where they are on track to graduate or, on track to get the next grade level. Any other questions for Mr. Ray and team?
Well, I just want to say that Dr. Duhan, we got a grant for Otis. It's a 5-year grant. It's a $5 million grant that he received, and we were one of the districts that were selected. And so one of the things that brought that into the fold was high school and middle school and what they were doing. And so when Dr. Duhan came out and he visited with this team, what they were doing, and that was 3 years ago, he was so impressed what they were doing. So I'm sure you guys have gotten calls from other, places like, what are you doing? How are you making this work? Because he's gone out and shared the work that they've done and our elementary, middle school, whatever, with other districts. And so they're turning around calling us like, how did you make that work? And this was just another part that was already in play, so they could build off of it to make it work for distance learning.
I will say we've had quite a few things in play already that were fairly easy to build off of. And so when you have some parameters in place, sometimes it's just a function of tweaking a little bit to make it work for what we face with this year. So again, any questions from the board for Mr. Ray and team? Thank you guys for the job.
You have 20 minutes.
Um,
You
it's
got
been-
20 minutes to conclude this meeting.
I'm trying. I'll try really hard. I'll talk fast. I will say that, we're trying really hard to prepare our middle school kids coming up. So one of the things that, J.J. Smith and I know Mr. Viven also did was bring our 8th graders on campus at Charles Page High School, encouraging them to explore all the programs that are offered at Charles Page High School. And so that was a coup of the day as well. And again, in that same framework of whatever it takes. Federal stimulus dollars, you guys are very well aware that we're being infused with money to help us navigate through COVID. One of the criteria is 20% of the dollars that we receive in the next phase of stimulus has to be spent on learning loss. I will say, Noelle is sitting behind me, and Sean Beard, we pulled data from AimsWeb, which is our benchmark assessment for RSA. And we wanted to see data from January, which is mid-year from 20 to mid-year 21. And what we've discovered, thankfully, is that our rate of improvement is about the same as it has always been. So I'm hoping for April's the testing month and getting ready to enter into that era that at least with our own benchmarks, we're not seeing incredible learning loss that maybe other districts are seeing that haven't been in school as much. That's a good thing. And of course, the Standout Success newsletter. I love the fact that Ms. Edelman's continue to put that together to give you guys an idea of what's going on. That goes out to all staff, of course, every month. But it gives you an opportunity to see the good things that are happening. So that concludes student empowerment, staff empowerment, unless you guys have questions. Okay, resource you mentioned. Yeah, we'll go to facility and resource. This is where I'm going to get a little testy. It has been one of the most frustrating weeks, maybe financially, politically, in a while. If you will recall, back in 2017, 2018, we were really fighting hard for teacher raises and all of those things, all things financial. And a couple of things have happened the last week or so that we all need to have our eyes open and really focused in on what's happening from a legislative standpoint. The first thing that's probably the most distressing to me and really should be for those of us that operate facilities, much like we do. We have, in my opinion, a pretty nice campus across all sites. But the State Board of Education settled the lawsuit week before last, via a 4-3 vote that's being questioned. And basically, 4 years ago, the charter schools filed a lawsuit against the State Board of Education in order to capture all funding options from public schools. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about the differences between charter. I know we kind of gone on and on about that, but here's how it affects Sand Springs and really how it affects every district in the state. Because they settled by resolution that I don't believe was on the Board of Education meeting at the State Board of Education. What they agreed to was that every funding source would be available for our counterparts, our charter schools, including the building fund. And I can get on a huge soapbox. I'll try to minimize it as much as I can tonight. But what that means is it includes even our virtual charter schools. And so starting, I believe, in the year 2022, what we will be asked to do, unless there's a stop to that, is for every student Sand Springs has that, say, attend a statewide virtual school that has very few brick and mortar sites, we'll have to pay an apportionment of our building fund to them. I have not spoken to one superintendent, it's not pretty fired up about it. And Ms. Arnold and I dragged her to the Capitol last week to talk about that, as well as House Bill 2078, which changes the funding formulas and doesn't allow us to have the high year, which is really scary for districts that are losing students. So in this COVID year, many of us, and you know this, have had students that have exited either to homeschool, but a lot have gone to epic charter schools, for instance, who have increased their student population a lot. It's disturbing, and it started a buzz immediately with OSSBA, with COSA, with some of the powers that be. And on our agenda tonight is an item about coming together with districts as in a lawsuit. You know how I absolutely detest lawsuits. I don't like them, but this one, it's an important one to fight that. And so I talked to John Pretty, who's our RFR, the consultant, our attorney for the district that consults with Counselor Watts. I spoke to him today, and as of today, there were 85 districts that were going to have this as a board item. They have one district represented from every single county in the state, and all schools in the Tulsa County are joining. And so you'll see a board item later asking for approval for us to enter into that lawsuit arm in arm with most of the districts in the state. I will be surprised if not every district. You may have read in the paper, Oklahoma City has already filed a lawsuit to recoup. Truly, Tulsa and Oklahoma City are the districts that are going to lose the most because they sponsor the most charter schools that are brick and mortar, but it's going to affect every single district in the state. I will remind you that when we run a bond issue, and this is, I started getting really, maybe a little envious of some of our neighbors that have a net assessed value that's a lot more than Sand Springs. They can literally bond out more than twice, say a Bixby that's kind of our size, more than twice of what we can bond here in our district in bonding, but it also calculates into our building fund. And our building fund's meager. Our building fund is barely enough to cover our property and liability insurance. And so for Sand Springs, that hurts. And so I want to really answer questions about that. If you have any, because there is an item later on in the agenda, and this is probably the biggest worry to me going forward. And this is in perpetuity, you guys. This is not about superintendent and board existing today. This goes on forever, meaning when we're long gone and not serving as superintendent and board of education. And so the idea is that we try to fight it and stop it before it starts. So any questions about that? I know OSSPA has sent out some emails with lots of information, so I don't want to belabor the conversation, but I certainly want to answer questions that you might have. Okay, well, that's the biggest one. 2078, I feel a little bit of need to go into detail about the funding formula, and that's taking away that third year high. Meaning, if you have a declining enrollment, with being able to use a third year high, you have the ability to have a year or two to plan and staffing accordingly. Without that, what it does is put you in a predicament where you're making decisions really quick. And as you all know, most of our budget really is about personnel. So you're talking about people. We can't really alter how much we pay for electric or those kinds of things, but we can't really, people are the component that would affect. So again, Ms. Arnold and I were in Oklahoma City trying to convey that messaging to our senator. Again, it passed. You all have the ability to look at the votes. I will say, Representative Nolan did vote no in my request for that bill. And so tell her thank you if you see her somewhere and out and about. That bill was sister to the open transfer bill, meaning if one passed, the other one was also a go, so both had to pass, which they did. The open transfer bill allows parents to openly transfer into our district. We have to set a capacity, which we'll determine as a group. But if we deny transfer, a parent can appeal to our local board of education, which is fine. But if you all also held and denied the transfer, that parent could also appeal to the state board of education, which takes local control out of the picture for student transfer. So just know that. We'll be working through defining capacity for Sand Springs Public Schools. And we'll move forward. Those two, I believe, were already signed by the governor last week. Yes, sir.
The transfer, if we deny a transfer and they appeal to the state board, and the state board could override what we do, and we would have to accept that too.
The only guideline right now, and I said in a meeting today for that, along with Carrie Schlegelberg, is going to be attendance. There's nothing in there for programming. There's nothing in there for special education IEP counts. There's nothing in there for discipline. Literally, attendance is it, and they can do it up to 2 times in a year. They're still trying to vet through it to give us direction, but and we have to post our numbers. I want to say it's like 4 times a year, 4 to yes, and make determinations, and that doesn't include who we might come in or might hold for. That's all out the window.
So we have some vetting to do because the FCE hasn't come out with the rules yet. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us, which is fine. We love the work. But I just think there is a sentiment and just some things are going on politically that I think that we need to be aware of as a Board of Education that believes strongly in this idea of public education that should be free to every student that's in our district. So just be aware of that. I would love to expand if you guys have a question about that. Okay, moving on. Mr. Mullins, thank you for calling and alerting us to the gas bill. Ms. Hvac actually has sent an email because Tulsa Public has gotten theirs. We went through a quote unquote winter event. We're all keenly aware of that sub-zero freezing temperatures, i.e. causing line breaks and flooding, and especially at East and Angus. But what has happened is the gas bills, I want to try not to use the word gouging because that's an ugly word, but truly have been increased exponentially. And I know Mr. Mullins is in the middle of that at St. Francis. We don't have our gas bill yet, so right now we're unaware of exactly what that's going to cost us. But Tulsa Public, I was told, received $1 million gas bill for the month of February. So not super glad about that. We have forwarded our contract to Counselor Watts, who's working in conjunction with RFR, who's gathering information from school districts. So I'm hoping for some relief, but that's a question mark that irritates me at least. We have, a budget that we work to preserve and spend wisely, and then to have that sucked up in an astronomical gas bill is a huge annoyance. So I don't want to belabor that, but that is going on and something that
We don't have a revised gas bill yet. No,
we don't have the revised one yet. Constellation sent the email that you saw in the email earlier this week. So we have the email that says, oh, and guess what? So you can read through it and you can see charges before versus charges now, but they haven't established nor have sent. I don't think any of our districts that use Constellation have received theirs as well. So I don't know if you want to expand on that, Mr. Morris.
Well, I can't for a second, I know it's not long, but, I had a conversation with the senior trader and senior marketing representative and the vice president in Constellation. And had a good discussion with them, and by the time I was done with my discussion, they understood that I've been in oil and gas for 10 years, and my wife has 30 years in oil and gas. They sent me the spot prices from their hubs and everything, because I said I wanted to see what they were paying. And, I shared that with the other people that have Constellation as well, and I shared it with Turkey as well. I don't know what to anticipate, so I have no idea. I'm hearing some very ugly numbers. You get an idea, Edmond went from 80,000 to 1.6 million. And I've heard, 3 to 4 times the increase on some. So it's just gonna depend on where our gas and what hub they pull from and what market they went to is what's gonna drive the price. But I wouldn't even venture a guess at this point.
Wisely, he said, I don't want to speculate, which I agree with. So we will keep you posted on that. As we know more. So Mr. Mullins, if you have questions, and I appreciate the
I'm
heads
gonna
up.
say, for instance, went up from January, February, 60 times.
Well, I know that I'm with the rep. I told them that I expected a call before I received the bill. And most of the CFOs that I know in the state that are working with Constellation as their third-party supplier have gone through me, and I've expressed the same sentiment to all the schools on it. We want a phone call, explain to us how you derive your prices and where they came from. And so I'm looking for that phone call before I receive the bill.
Some
So
of our,
when I receive, I said, I'm almost 2 months waiting. I'm a month waiting for the last bill. So it hasn't arrived yet. So I have no idea what it's going to be.
I mean, obviously TPS has received theirs in on my last superintendent's meeting with some of the really statewide, not just Tulsa region. Tulsa City had already received hers, and there's just, it's not just Constellation, it's everywhere. It's just annoying. We try to stay stable. We've done a good job. We are not worried about the ability to pay a bill, but that's not the bill we want to pay. So we're going to try really hard to combat that. So we will keep you posted. I'm disgusted.
Saturday is Sherry, that on the days that it was so super cold is the days that the price went sky high and our buildings were closed.
Okay.
So
Correct. Okay, moving on. That's a fun topic. There is some hooray. Ms. Hvac and Mr. Bynum got clarity from OSIG. We have bid out our roof repair competitively. Bids were open. You'll see that as an action item also below. So that's exciting. Hailstorm happened last April or something, so we're a year out, but this feels good to get that underway and ready to go. And then lastly, federal stimulus dollars. There are 3 sets of those, namely CARES, ESSER, and ARP. Or some people like to say ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3, which is maybe an easier way to look at it. We don't know what ESSER 3 or the ARP last round is going to be, but we are hearing it's about 2.3 times what we had in the second round, which is good. If we have been meeting pretty steadily about priorities, one of the things that requires no pre-approval is HVAC, and after our experience with our carbon monoxide and our HVAC units, we've been replacing a little at a time. This is going to enable us without pre-approval, because the air quality is a big deal with COVID, to replace some very aged units, as well as district-wide incorporate an energy management system, which is needed sorely. And then the other portion also that doesn't need prior approval from the State Department of Ed is school buses. We purchased a glut. I think Ms. Hayes, our new transportation director, has identified 10 buses, no air conditioning, that are just needing to be taken off route and retired. And so we're going to suggest that we also purchase 10 yellow route buses. You can't do activity with the money. So we'll kind of get to the learning loss. 20% comes with the third round, and we'll talk through that as soon as we know exactly what the amount is. So just any questions you have about roof bids, HVAC, school bus expenditures. We're ready to move on to item 7.
Yes.
Dialogue will continue. We talked through a date. We're trying to determine a date in the next couple of weeks to continue dialogue on the Standout Learning YouTube channel. As you know, that's got some really good, nice views for us. Really wanting to highlight not just enrollment specifically. I think people are getting tired of us talking about DIVE. We're having good success with people pre-registering. We really want to get into detail about what we offer. And so educate people a little bit about what are those programs that are pretty cool at Charles Page High School. What is the student internship program and how do we engage? And so some of those topics, probably highlighting Mr. Viven at the next one. I haven't actually told him yet, so I'm announcing that publicly for him, so that he can kind of express what we have for our students there. As we said before, thank you, Jamie. And of course, Claudia Smith is also a superstar in our world. But 21st Century Grant has been submitted. So you all know that's the after school and summer program focusing on Garfield and Northwoods Elementary, our highest poverty schools. We have now, you guys, had that grant for 16 years. We had one gap year where we did not get the grant. And I love to say that because that means we started it back in 2004. So I love it. I'm hoping that we are granted that again. I do know Jamie Conrad is amazing at establishing relationships. And right now, I think the relationship is that the State Department of Education really does respect what we're trying to do. So keep your fingers crossed that we get that for another 5 years. And then we just started a social media campaign, much like we did during the bond election, just highlighting our district. We're kind of framing it, did you know? And then giving a little nugget about what Sand Springs has to offer. The latest one went out today about the extended care for our early childhood center and a nominal fee. People need to know that. And so costs a little bit to boost posts, but we also wrap zip codes to get it out predominantly for 74063, but also our neighbors that also are adjacent to us. So people know what we have to offer. So you'll start seeing some ad campaigns come out on Facebook promoting Sand Springs colors. I think that would conclude number 7, unless you guys have questions. Okay, health and safety, again, to attribute the big ideas to JJ Smith. He, as you know, chairs that committee. Really focused this month on mental health, specifically with our day rate services for students, but also just a reminder, we do offer an employee assistance program that's free for employees to help with mental health issues they may have at home. And I think we forget to say that out loud, but we definitely remind our employees that is something that's available to them, as well as services provided through our partner Sand Springs Community Service, which, as you know, is housed in our what used to be the Central Elementary campus. This is the time of year we start doing site walkthroughs, and so I need to tell a funny story about Mr. Bynum this weekend, but he really is kind of the key in terms of understanding what's going on in sites to start those summer work issues. He needs a gold star like that. I think that we need to celebrate him in the next work meeting. I get a text from him Saturday. Coach Watkins was at the baseball field after the game and noticed smoke. And I get a text and Mike said, there's a fire south of transportation. And I'm just saying, you can't make this stuff up. So I said, I'll be right there. So I drive out, Mike's waiting. I hear the fire trucks, here they come. And they've got it under control. Lottie's in the field trying to swamp out the fire. Okay, well, let me know how this goes. So I don't know, not very much later, maybe 10 minutes later, I get a picture of an animal, a charred animal. And I call because what in the world? He said, we found the culprits and a squirrel, you tell the story much better, had got in a transformer and I guess called to choke. I know, right? It's terrible. Falls to the ground, starts the fire. Anyway, my point is this man, the kinds of things that he deals with on literally a daily basis, I couldn't even start to describe. You find a little comedy in it, but honestly, it's those calls he's getting for security on the weekends, a squirrel and a transformer, really? You can't make this stuff up. And I know they're going to tell the stories. I'm sorry to belabor that one, but holy cow, he's just amazing. So anyway.
And no one had any barbecue sauce.
Listen, I've got a story about that, but I'm not going to tell you now, but I know you went out, but remind me about squirrels later. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, and then I would be remiss if I didn't mention our child nutrition department. As you know, regardless of the kind of learning that's happening, those ladies under the direction of Ms. Pearson absolutely get it done and they're feeding kids. I love our leadership team and our teachers and our staff because Better Together was kind of a hashtag I put on one of my superintendent's notes, a couple, maybe last time, because they just get it done. They just do it. The child nutrition, she's, it's been busy, but now she's suggesting an upgrade on point of sale, which makes it more streamlined. It's cloud-based. It's just, we're always reaching for how do we improve. And I just need to say that out loud. That team has been amazing. Those women through quarantines and distance learning and all of those things, her ladies in the office are 7 in the cafeterias to make sure that we have the staff and availability of getting it done so we get the kids. And it just happens. So any questions about health and safety? Okay, everybody seems it's okay with you, Madam President? We'll go for the consent agenda. Yes, please. Want to bring some items to your attention. Number 19. Those are resignations and retirements. It's A through K. I will say this, a couple of things, and I won't elaborate time, but I will say this. We had a deadline for people to resign, if you remember, as a condition of the stipend back in December. That's a hooray because that means these postings get to go up a little bit early, which is good for us. If you wait too long, as you know, applicant pools start to get very slender. And so the idea is let's get them posted. So you'll also see several postings go up. I will also say that retirement, this is year 3 of the raise. So know that once you get 3 years average, we would have expected this to be the year that we would see some retirements. So every time I see one come in, I just want to cry. The teachers talking about typically teachers that have been very loyal to the district and been here for years that are amazing. So just want to kind of bring that to your attention. Out of state travel, you guys, we are itching to get back to normal. I promise you. This one is an approval for December of this year. So next school year, I know this seems early, but that's from our girls basketball team on Orlando. I'm going to ask you to approve that. And then item number 22 is really just quotes from our director of technology for things that we use in the district for computers. 'Tis the season for computer replacement.
And I'm not waiting until a June board meeting to get approval to buy
Right.
those things. I'm just saying.
Uh,
Those lead times are obnoxious.
They're obnoxious, so we want to get those done. So I bring it to your attention, but this is a request in order to complete summer work. So with that said, consent agenda, unless you guys have questions. Any questions?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion. Second. Vote please.
Jen?
Aye.
Collins?
Aye.
Nagel?
All right.
Wyman?
Aye.
Lakers?
Action items.
Number 23 is employment of an additional technology repair person, really it's another IT support. We have been overwhelmed, obviously, the one-to-one initiative that has been literally K through 12 at this point. It's been quite an undertaking. And when you think about going from 9 to 12 to K-12, then all of a sudden the amount of Chromebook repairs literally triples. And so that would be the request for the employment of a technician and then biology teacher for Charles Page High School.
Closed executive session. Okay. You want to propose the employment?
I'll make the motion to approve the proposed employment of the 2 positions.
Second.
Second. Vote please.
Jen?
Aye.
Collins?
Aye.
Nagel?
All right.
Wyman?
Aye.
Lakers?
Okay, discussion of proposed approval to revise the 2020-2021 school year calendar.
Right, so this is perfunctory. Anytime you have inclement weather days where you use emergency days, it's a requirement from the State Department of Ed to revise the calendar and reapprove it. As you know, we had the snowmageddon or whatever you want to call that hellacious time when we're out of school. So Ms. Arnold took, revised the calendar for approval tonight.
I'll make a motion we approve to revise calendar for the 2021 school year.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, motion and second and vote, please.
Gannon?
Aye.
Holland? Nagel?
Aye.
Wagner? Aye. Wagers?
Okay. Item number 26 is exactly what I described in my superintendent report, and that's the request for authorized participation in a legal action against the State Board of Education to address the equalization of funding set forth in their resolution that was passed by a 4-3 vote at the last State Board of Education meeting. And I would be more than happy to answer any questions regarding that request.
You said so far, RFR says 85 school districts have it on their agenda.
85 districts have agreed to have it on their agenda. It's interesting, I got a call from, not a call, an email from a publication that I hadn't heard of. Is in Oklahoma, it wasn't Oklahoma Watch, but another one today asking for why we were doing it. I haven't responded, however, I will, because I also wanted a copy of our board, obviously our minutes, asking why. I think what the deal is, we were probably the first district that has had a board meeting that would have had that on there, because not everybody has it the first Monday of the month. But 85 districts as of today, this morning, and they're doing the ADM for cost. So per student, Counselor Pretty today said that they're estimating about 60 to 80 cents per weighted ADM student. So it's a portion based on the size of our student population, which is fair. I was the one that actually made that suggestion. We handled, if you remember, the motor vehicle in that way, mostly because your little districts like at Boylton, very good colleague of mine there, it's hard to ask every district to pay the same when their budget's not the same. So that's how they'll do the billing for that.
Already made it across the world.
I'm sure.
Sand Springs, Yukon, Walton, among the first districts. Yeah.
I this is a passionate one for me. Because it's in perpetuity. And we struggle as a Sand Springs School District with the net assessed value anyway. And so I have to tell you, it's been a testy week. Ms. Arnold would attest to it, but it's one of those things that gets me fired up because we're trying really hard to do the right thing for kids and provide all the things that we need to provide for them, and working at getting any kind of grant we can for, like, the 21st century is a perfect example for our kids that are underprivileged, and to have to share that in a way with particularly the virtual charter is just almost more than I can say. So
I'm sorry, will Tulsa City be in the same lawsuit?
yes, they already had started some legal action in congruence already because they sponsor the most charter schools because they're urban. It makes sense. I think, so that had been going on for a while too, but I think this really set us back in regard to just a blatant approval with 4-1 vote. And I know I shared Joy Hoffmeister's response to that. Like I said, I haven't had one superintendent in the state that would agree with that necessarily, that works for what I would call brick and mortar public school, for the passage of 2078. I'm going to stop railing now because I know that it's obnoxious, but it's really important.
I'll make a motion that we approve the, how do I say this? Authorize the school district's attorney in consultation with different schools to initiate legal action against the Oklahoma State School Board of Education to address equalization funding is set forth for the board's resolution. Approved at the board special meeting on March 25th, 2021.
I second what he said.
Made all that up.
Any more discussion?
My only concern, and Sherry, I know we don't have an answer to this, is but just before one of the items we said we're going to make an application for the project Lead the Way, which you've had since 2004, go to the State Board of Education. We're suing the State Board of Education, but we're asking for funding from the State. Board of
Right, so let me clarify, you're talking about the grants. The grant proposal goes to the State Department of Ed. Two different entities, right? So the State Board of Education governs all schools in the state of Oklahoma and also is the governing board of the SDE. But those grant applications are SDE and they're peer review. So when I say that, that means as they're going through those grant applications, the people that are reading them
are peers of folks that are actually in the ranks doing the work. So I'm not worried about it.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Okay, we had a motion and a second, a vote please.
Again.
Aye.
Mullen.
Aye.
Noggle.
Aye.
Wagner. Aye. Waken.
Aye. Number 27.
Yep, the proposed acceptance of the bids and awards of contracts, that's for the roof. Again, just to provide some clarity, I know Ms. Koch is here if you have any questions for that, but it just feels good to be able to get the work done now that we finally had clarity and the actual bid package was cleaned up, for lack of a better term, by OSIG.
Any more discussion?
Move your motion.
We need a motion, yes.
I'll make a motion to accept the bid that's presented for roofs throughout the district.
A motion and a second, a vote please.
Again.
Aye.
Mullen.
Aye.
Noggle.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Waken.
Aye. Great, review business for April 2021, any announcements?
Graduation prom are on, I believe you have the dates. The other announcement, I would say the Sand Springs Education Foundation is not having the banquet this year because of the obvious. They're talking about an event in August, which should be really hot, maybe Bright Morning Farms, just kind of a smaller event. So I'll keep you posted on that. That really is the only announcements I have, unless you guys have others.
Just a reminder there, help me remember, one graduation,
Correct.
football field.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Wait a minute. Have we decided who's gonna drive to the graduation?
We're gonna meet
We'll be at the old,
parking lot and
yeah, the
I'm
old
gonna
building.
just drive you and drop you off the door.
yeah,
That works.
Got you.
we'll meet at the old building and drive. Okay, we always had to find out who was driving.
I'll again make my motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Yeah, I'm driven to vote please.
Yeah.
Aye.
Mullen. Noggle.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Waken.
Aye. Thank you very much.